From Manhattan Beach and the World Wide Web, you're listening to CHSR HealthyLife.net.
As a service to our listeners, this program is for general information and entertainment purposes only. CHSR HealthyLife.net does not recommend, endorse, or object to the views, products, or topics expressed or discussed by show hosts or their guests. We suggest you always consult with your own personal, medical, financial, or legal advisor.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Dr. Theresa Nicassio Show, a place of inspiration, education, and hope for a more compassionate and sustainable world. I offer this show to you freely. However, your support and donations really matter. To make a donation or to learn more about sponsorship and advertising opportunities, please visit TheresaNicassio.com. That's Theresa with an H, Nicassio with an N like Nancy and two S's. So it's THERESA Nicassio, NICASSIO.com. And be sure to join us next week when the phone lines will again be open, and Kate Maliha of Love Your Age Fitness will be with us talking about exercise for healthy aging, mood, and brain health. I'm really excited to hear about the awesome work that she's been doing and about some of the research that's coming out on the topic. It's really awesome. Anyway, it's going to be a great show. You won't want to miss it. And today, just a reminder, as those who have been listening, we have our first live show of the Dr. Theresa Nicassio Show. The phone lines are open in case you're able to call in. The number is, if you're in the U.S., 800-555-5453, or outside of the U.S., it's 310-371-5454. Anyway, gosh, we have a great show for you today. The guest we have, I have an amazing bio for you that I'd like to share with you. I met this wonderful woman. Her name is Jules Shepard. Many of you already know her. She's probably one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. But even so, don't let that fool you, because she's a powerful force to be reckoned with. And she's taken on the gluten-free world and the celiac disease advocacy and education by storm, especially since the release of her first gluten-free cookbook in 2007. Since then, Jules has started her own company, authored 2 more award-winning books, became the associate editor of Living Without's Gluten-Free and More, and in 2014 resigned her position with her first company and started gfjules.com to produce compromise-free gluten-free baking mixes and flour. And we're going to have her talk a bit about what compromise-free means today as well, because that's going to be an important part. That's an important part of her journey. She also hosts the Gluten-Free Voice podcast and pens the #1 voted gluten-free blog, and continues to be the recipient of numerous awards in the gluten-free industry. Jules has also been a huge advocate around safety for those with gluten sensitivity. She co-founded the 1in133.org website and an organization, and she helped build, or she actually spearheaded building, an 11-foot tall, 1-ton gluten-free cake in Washington, D.C. to get the FDA's attention. I so want to hear about that today, Jules. She's also continued her advocacy by exposing other dangerous practices in manufacturing and in the restaurant industry, and she promotes awareness and education around safe gluten-free products. Jules travels like crazy. We are super lucky to have her here today in one spot for an hour. She teaches about living safely and happily gluten-free and raising the standards of the gluten-free community by sharing recipes, videos, and products that bring baking success even to those who have never baked before. She's like the gluten-free baking queen is how I like to think of her. Anyway, Jules, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm thrilled to be here and to be on your very first live broadcast. That's very exciting. Thank you for having
so exciting. It's an honor. So Jules and I, we connected, I think it might have been close to 2.5 or 3 years ago, around when I was putting together my book. But I actually came across Jules myself along my own journey of when I discovered that I couldn't eat gluten and I probably had celiac disease. And I just stumbled upon her on the internet, and I'm so grateful for you and specifically about you sharing your story. And that's what I've asked you to come today to talk about, Jules. And I'm wondering if you might be willing to start with talking a little bit about your story. I mean, you used to be a lawyer, and now you're a gluten-free blogger. I mean, it's a pretty big
perfect
jump.
sense, don't you think?
Yeah.
Such a national connection. Yeah, I was in, well, I guess backing up, I first got sick when I was in college, which was many, many years ago, and it was like that light switch moment when, people describe sometimes when they have found out that they have celiac disease. One day I was fine, and the next day I wasn't. It was very odd. I thought I had the flu, and I just never got better. And I had the world at my fingertips in that I was at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, amazing doctors there, and I, pursued every avenue once I realized it just wasn't getting any better. And later on, I went to Duke University, and I was later on at University of Florida. I didn't seem to be able to get quite enough education, so I just kept going. But everywhere I went, I was seeing doctors at all of these different places. I went to Georgetown. No one could figure out what was wrong with me. And
How old were you when you first got sick?
I was about 18 when I first got sick, and it was about 10 years before I was diagnosed. Wow. And they just kept saying, you must have irritable bowel syndrome, which luckily doesn't happen quite as much anymore, that people are getting that diagnosis instead of the proper diagnosis of celiac disease, but you still hear of it happening, and it's very, very frustrating because that's kind of the diagnosis of exclusion. Okay, we've looked at everything else. We can't figure out what's wrong with you. We're going to have to give you a name for something. And what was interesting, and you and I actually talked about this, I remember we were talking about your symptoms when you were first, figuring out that gluten was a problem for you. No one put together the myriad symptoms that I had and looked at them globally, which is why I think holistic medicine is so wonderful, and naturopaths are so wonderful, because they do tend to take a little step back and look at what's your diet and, what are all of the symptoms, even if they don't seem to fit together, and are you getting enough sleep, it's all of those types of things. And so I had persistent migraines, I had iron deficiency anemia, I went on one antibiotic after the other for sinus infections. As soon as I would be done with one round, I would get another sinus infection and have to go on antibiotics again. Just all of these things that at the time didn't fit the stereotypical celiac disease gastrointestinal pattern of problems. I also had those problems, but they were viewed separately. So the doctors, ironically and sadly enough, told me that I needed to eat more fiber, and so to go eat more whole wheat and more bran and all of these things that ultimately were poisoning me. So
isn't it funny? I mean, it's not funny, but it's funny not funny.
Yeah, in a really sick and twisted way. But so I just, I went about my way, thinking, well, I would pop a couple Tums while I'm sitting in class. Not that it helped, but I thought, it's better than nothing. And I'd pop some ibuprofen, and I'd take whatever antibiotic I was taking at the time, and I would eat dry frosted mini wheats in class. I must have been very annoying to everyone around me because those things are so loud. But I would just sit and just munch undried frosted mini wheats because I thought, well, this is the best way I, as a student who doesn't have a lot of money, can go buy fiber and eat it. And so I just sat there poisoning myself and making things worse.
Wow.
And that went on for 10 years. And during that time, I, pursued a couple graduate degrees, and I had a judicial clerkship in a federal court, and was, doing stressful, high-level type of things that kept me really, really busy, and very stressed. So people just said, well, it's the IBS again whenever I would have extreme flare-ups. And they said, well, you're obviously stressed because of all of this pressure that you're under, and that's causing IBS. Mm-hmm. Well, fast forward a little bit, I wound up going to West Virginia, of all places, to prosecute domestic violence under a Violence Against Women Act grant. And talk about stress. That was extremely stressful. And I was in the courtroom every single day and dealing with, life and death situations. And so my health certainly did not get better. And so I went to a gastroenterologist, among other specialists in West Virginia, and he said, in just doing my intake, he said, have you ever been tested for celiac disease? And, at that point I was thinking, well, I've been to, UNC and Duke and Georgetown and Florida, and here I am, and this doctor, not affiliated with a university, just a regular old gastroenterologist, is saying, have you ever been tested for whatever? And I thought, of course I have, because they tested me for everything under the sun. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I think I want to test you again. And I said, okay, fine, whatever.
You've been through it all already.
Oh, I know. And you've had your own round of this stuff, but it's never-ending humiliation, basically, with these types of tests. But fine. If you think that that's what I need, fine. And so I went in and had this endoscopy, which is the upper intestinal scope. And when I came out, he showed me pictures of my upper intestinal tract, which I, strangely enough, had never seen before. And I said, yeah, that looks like what I would imagine is an upper intestinal tract. Sure, whatever. Mm-hmm. And he said, it doesn't look right at all. And I said, well, why would I know that? And he said, there's all these crypts and folds, and there's no villi. And again, I'm thinking, I have no idea what language you're speaking right now, but it's not making any sense to me. So he said, basically, I had no villi left in my upper intestinal tract, and I was just not absorbing any food. And he said, I did the biopsies to determine for sure if you have celiac. He said, but I can look at you and tell you have celiac, which doesn't happen that often, that it's that pervasive. So that was really miraculous that he was able to diagnose me. But the unfortunate thing was, I said, what does that mean? What kind of pill do I take? And he said, oh, there's no pill for that. You just don't eat gluten. And I said, what's gluten? He said, it's in bread and pasta. And that was it. And I was just left on my own, blowing in the wind in the 1990s without really any internet. I was in rural West Virginia. I just had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
So I remember I went to go speak at a conference across the state, like maybe a day or two later. Had no idea what to eat. So I went and I bought a bag of peppermint patties. And I drove across the state, and I ate peppermint patties. And I gave my lecture and ate some peppermint patties in between the lectures, and then I drove back across the state and ate peppermint patties. That's all I ate all day.
Oh, my God. Well, this is one of the tragedies.
There's no bread or pasta,
You find out what can't, you find out what you can't eat, but then you're just left with what you don't know what you can eat. It's really
It was far worse back then. I mean, you certainly could never go anywhere and say, I need to eat gluten-free, and people look at you like you had three heads. And no one knew what gluten was, and least of all me at the time. And I also have been a vegetarian since I was 15. So, in an ordinary situation, someone in that place, I guess, in your life and where you find yourself, you'd say, all right, well, I'll just go order a steak or something, and there was just no good protein source for me. Not that I knew very much about nutrition at the time, but I had been surviving on things like pasta and bagels and pizza, and, I pretty much was just a carboholic, and all of a sudden I was left with nothing. Right. And it was a really, really, really hard time in my life, because more than most people, probably at least my age, I was really into baking, as you alluded to in the beginning of the broadcast. I have always been that way. In fact, as part of the way I put myself through graduate school, I ended up baking cakes and breads and cookies and things, muffins for the cafe at the graduate school and selling them there. I just, baking was a form of stress release. I'm from the South. When you have people over, or you want to greet someone, or you want to make someone feel better, or anything, you bake them something, it was this huge part of who I was, and that suddenly was gone, just gone overnight, because there was nothing. In the 90s, you couldn't bake anything gluten-free that was palatable. I mean, you could eat a baked potato, or you could eat rice, but you couldn't bake cookies, or you couldn't bake a cake. It wouldn't turn out. It was rice flour, and that was pretty much it. I know, it was so disgusting. It was disgusting. It really was. And so I entered a period of mourning, really, and it's a very true and accurate description, I think, for people even today when they're given a diagnosis with something like celiac, where they have to take a chunk of food away. In the abstract, people are like, oh, well, that's great. Like, you don't have cancer? Absolutely. Fantastic. What a blessing. But if you are the person experiencing that, food is everything social in life. Yeah, our emotional relationship with food, and I can't talk about that enough. The comfort foods, the things like you were saying that you associate with love and generosity. When someone moves in, or there's something, you bake them something, and when you receive those things, it's almost like you're receiving this sense of love, even though obviously it's not the love itself, but we get those associations like those. Pavlov's dogs, I talked about in a previous show. Pavlov's dogs, they salivated to the sound of a bell. They developed this emotional relationship with food, just like we do, only ours is like really, really complex. So I love that you name that. I'm talking about that as a mourning. It's such a huge part of any diagnosis where there's been, whether a food allergy, or whether it's diabetes, whether it's, other kind of autoimmune problems, or, having cancer, and so you have to try to eat differently, or heart disease. You suddenly have to think differently, and you can't be so automated, but it leaves a void. It does, and when you start breaking it down and think, if you want to go out to lunch with your coworkers, or if your office orders in, or if it's someone's birthday, or if you want to, God forbid, go on a date, Oh, I know. And then don't even mention holidays like Thanksgiving. My goodness, there are some really, really severe absences that you feel when you're isolated food-wise. And I had been isolated to a certain extent voluntarily because of my vegetarianism, particularly living in a not-so-urban area in the 90s. Vegetarianism was not respected, I guess, as much as maybe it is now. Certainly veganism's a hot topic right now. So many people are recognizing the health benefits of it. But at the time, it was kind of, at least in my generation, I guess, was more novel. And I had been, like I mentioned, vegetarian since I was 15. So I had felt that, but again, it was voluntary. So I wore that in a way, not as a badge of honor, but like, I owned it. Like, I chose this, so I can deal with these consequences, and it's not going to bother me. But when someone put something else on me, like they wrapped me in this cloak of celiac, that I did not choose. And there's a very different way that you internalize that. And, it's almost like, a stigma, but also in a way that you're also, bitter because you go out and you want to eat them. Like, I never wanted a hamburger. Like, did not miss steak. I didn't want that. But I would go out to eat, and I wanted that bagel. Like, I wanted it, or I wanted that piece of birthday cake, but I couldn't have it. And so there was an isolationism, there was a bitterness, there was an anger to a certain extent, all of these feelings that wash over you. And it took a really long time for me to get over it. And I'm so blessed now to be in a situation where I can help other people get over that faster, but I had no one at the time. Like, I didn't have any friends or family or anyone else who had gone through anything like this. And like I said, there's really not much on the internet at the time to really speak of. There were no support groups. There was nothing. And the doctor, like I said, was good for him that he diagnosed me, but he didn't know what to tell me to do after that.
Right.
I mean, I go every year to the University of Maryland School of Medicine. I'm invited to speak to med students there, first-year medical students, to talk about celiac disease from a patient's perspective. When I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I had friends who were in med school at the time, my age, who said to me, yeah, I heard about that. We talked about it in school for about 7 or 8 minutes, and they said, it's a pediatric disorder, and don't worry about it, you're never going to see it.
Wow.
So not even the physicians knew what it was, much less what to tell the patient to do, or certainly that there was an emotional component to this. It was very, here are the stitches for your cut finger, and go ahead, go home. That's it. There's nothing, there's no follow-up, there's nothing. There were no dietitians to help you. So it was a very, very different world then, which is not to minimize when they're diagnosed today. They certainly have the same feelings, the same stresses, the same components, but there's more support now.
Yeah, it's so true. So, we're going to be having to take a break in a minute, but I just want to mention, so, as you're all listening to Jules talk, I mean, so many parallels with my own experience. And so you can imagine, Jules, what it was like when I was in this place, a dark place. I think it was about 2 in the morning. I was on the computer. I was just trying to figure this out, what I was going to do. And my daughter had also become vegan when she was 12, about the same time. And so when I heard your voice, it was like a voice literally in the dark, of hope. And so it's really exciting to be able to share with you, listeners today, some of Jules' story and so forth. We're going to talk some more with Jules after the break, so stick around. And thank you, Jules, for being here.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment.
Being inspired by a speaker while learning everyday positive information that you can use to help your life is exactly what Dr. Theresa Nicassio does when she speaks in front of your group. From healthcare professionals to special needs parenting and everything in between, Dr. Theresa Nicassio can customize topics for your group on everything from health to psychology. To book Dr. Theresa Nicassio as a speaker for your group, visit yumfoodforliving.com or call 604-445-6463. That's 604-445-6463.
For all your live or pre-recorded webcasting needs, come to earthchannel.com. Get your web-based message out to a select group or the whole world. It's easy. A pioneer in webcasting, earthchannel.com provides the best products and services to big corporations and government users. And now this same technology is available to you. They have the best Earthcast encoders, servers, and products to meet your technical needs. But wait, don't want to mess with technical stress? No problem. They'll do it for you. EarthChannel.com is your answer. You can use webcasting for lots of things like advertising, marketing, customer support, training, and don't forget web radio and TV. In fact, you're listening to a live Earthcast right now. So come to EarthChannel.com. Actualize your audio or video webcasting needs today. You can't beat the friendly service or the price. Call earthchannel.com at 1-800-849-8978. That's 1-800-849-8978.
Yumfoodforliving.com is the place to get easy, allergy-free recipes, all free of sugar, gluten, and dairy. But that's not all you'll get when you visit yumfoodforliving.com. You'll get resources for all kinds of things like wellness articles, videos, podcasts, a blog, all to help you create easy, healthy living. There's even a 50-page downloadable book introducing you to the philosophy of yum. Don't wait. Visit yumfoodforliving.com. Yumfoodforliving.com. That's yumfoodforliving.com.
If you like to spend your television viewing time learning about some of the things that you may have missed in history class, or if history was your favorite subject, then you should check out the link to the History Channel on the HealthyLife.net advertiser page. Order DVD sets by series or by subject matter right from our homepage while you still enjoy your favorite HealthyLife.net show.
You're listening to HealthyLife.net, the radio network that brings positive talk with positive change to make your world a little better.
Welcome back. back to the Dr. Theresa Nicassio Show. For those of you who are just joining us, we have been talking with Jules Shepard. Love this woman, one of the most influential celiac disease bloggers and authors in the world. And before the break, Jules was talking about her story, and during the break we were also talking a bit about how it parallels so much with my own. Years of many years. It was 45 years I had migraines before I discovered they were optional. Gluten was causing it, so amongst other symptoms. But I thought that it might be nice, Jules, if we could talk a bit about some of the research and what you have learned as an educator and advocate out there about celiac disease and what they're discovering, the relationships of celiac. As we're mentioning, migraines are very common. A lot of people with migraines, more than the common population, have celiac disease. And what are some of the other things that some of the listeners might want to know about that are connected with gluten or celiac disease?
Sure. I'd love to refer people to my website for more information as well. If you go to gfjules.com, on the top scroll bar there's a tab that says Why and How to Be Gluten-Free, and there's all kinds of resources there. One is specifically called What is Celiac Disease, and the other one that I think is particularly relevant to your question is gluten allergy or intolerance symptoms. These, I've heard from so many people, have been really accessible articles, and they're really useful for people to share with family members or friends who either don't believe what they're going through or don't understand what they're going through or think they're making it up or what have you. Mm-hmm. Because it does have, they're littered with links to research articles, to research centers, to just all kinds of very, very legitimate authority. My background is, as we mentioned earlier, in law, so I'm very research oriented. I don't want to say anything that could possibly not be true. So I have done a ton of research on that, and I also have a lot of that information in my second book, which is called The First Year Celiac Disease and Living Gluten-Free. Mm-hmm. And so for more information, please go there because you can internalize it and digest it, so to speak, at your own pace. But the interesting thing about celiac disease, you and I both share some sort of strange-ish symptoms, the migraines and things like that people don't tend to think of as connected to gastroenterological issues. But when you think of the gut as the first line of defense for your immune system, then it becomes making more sense, because what happens is when the gut defense is down because you have an autoimmune disease, namely celiac in this case, your body is confused and it's fighting itself and it's fighting things that are not actual problems, which would be the gluten, protein, and food. It doesn't have anything left to fight other things. And so you will get more sick and you will be more likely to contract other things. Unfortunately, once the body has one autoimmune disease, you're more likely to contract another autoimmune disease, which no autoimmune disease is a good thing. But, nobody wants lupus or multiple sclerosis or type 1 diabetes or any other, rheumatoid arthritis, other autoimmune diseases. You don't want to have more than one. You really don't.
But it's really common that
it's very common, because once the body is in that cycle of fighting itself, it becomes confused and starts to do that on other levels. So basically, you or me or anyone else could manifest symptoms quite differently, but what's happening inside of our bodies is the same, which is your upper intestinal tract does what it's supposed to do. It breaks down the food initially and starts to absorb certain nutrients, which is where the gluten is absorbed. And because your body is confused and thinks gluten is a toxin, your body attacks the gluten, but it's been absorbed by the upper intestinal tract. So in effect, it's attacking itself, like where it has been absorbed. So you're beating down that whole upper intestinal tract. So you're not able to absorb other nutrients properly, which is why you have things like iron deficiency anemia, because you're not able to absorb iron. You can have osteoporosis or osteopenia because you're not able to absorb calcium. Other things like that manifest, easy bruising, just all kinds of things that are nutritionally related. You also can have every kind of gastrointestinal symptom you can imagine on one end of the spectrum or the other. It used to be thought that if you didn't have diarrhea, you couldn't have celiac. You can be constipated with celiac. You can gain weight. You can lose weight. You can pretty much do anything because your body is really under attack and is kind of not sure which way to go with anything. So obviously you're going to feel fatigued. You're going to feel tired and lethargic. Some people have hair loss, fibromyalgia. We've mentioned the headaches or the migraines. There could be infertility issues. I've encountered many women who only found out they had celiac because they were unable to conceive or because they had repeated miscarriages. Yeah. You can have this mental fog that people describe. Mostly you don't know you have it until you don't have it anymore, but a lot of people have that. Bleeding issues. You could have shortness of breath. Little children often have failure to thrive or are abnormally short. Can have really bad skin problems like acne, aphthous ulcers. It really can be almost anything. Yeah. I gave an entire lecture to the Dental Hygienists Association here in Maryland several years ago on the oral manifestations of celiac disease. There are that many just in the mouth that you could identify as being symptoms of celiac disease. Yeah. So I tell anyone, and I'm not trying to go out and tell everybody they have celiac, but I tell anyone who has a battery of problems, they have no answers, the doctors don't know what the heck's going on with them, that they should have blood work done that includes the initial test for celiac, because it can be masked as almost anything.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that was really important, we talked before, I think on your show, we were talking about how the tests, though, themselves they're not 100%. So even if you come out with a negative, whether it's even the blood test and or even the biopsy, there's no guarantee that you actually don't have celiac disease. But even if you don't have celiac disease, there's a huge, what's the estimated numbers now of non-celiac gluten intolerance? Is it around 9% now? Or, I mean, some people say 9%, some people say 50%. It's somewhere, it's pretty high. Do you know what it is? It
kind of all depends on who you ask, because they don't have a test yet that's been developed for it, and it is a diagnosis kind of exclusion now, the gluten sensitivity. The most recent credible projections that I have seen is between 15 and 20% of the population.
Yeah, and even above and beyond that, the gluten protein, the gliadin, for all of you who are listening, you can't be broken down. It can't be broken down, that protein, by any human, but most people's bodies are able to deal with it. But even if they are dealing with it, their immune system is having to work harder. So what I've been hearing in terms of the research is anyone who has any autoimmune problems in particular that they know of, that everybody with autoimmune problems are now it's being recommended that they avoid gluten, even if they don't seem to have a problem specifically with gluten, just because it adds more stress to the immune system.
And the other thing, just to mention real quickly, that if you do, as you said, Theresa, if you do come back negative on the blood work in particular, there are lots of false negatives on that. And even, as you said, with the biopsy, it can be negative because I mentioned earlier in the broadcast that my upper intestinal tract was, severely damaged. Most people's aren't. You have a very long intestinal tract, and most people, they'll have sections that are in bad shape. And unless the biopsies are taken from the right sections and are read in the appropriate manner, and enough biopsies are taken, then it can also produce a false result. The other thing that you need to emphasize as well when you're talking to people about this is that just because you test negative for it once doesn't mean that you're never going to have it or that you're never going to test positive for it in the future. So it's something to keep on the radar, particularly if it's a familial thing, because it is genetic. So if there's anyone in your family with it, it's definitely possible that you can have it now or will develop it later.
That's wonderful. Okay, well, Jules, we need to take another break. Listeners, stick around. After the break, we're going to talk about Jules, David and Goliath, taking on the FDA with a 1-ton cake, 11-foot tall cake that she and her community created. And we're going to hear more about that and some of the fiery ways that Jules has been able to bring this and make it more, educate more people and start to make some changes on a policy level. So stay with us. We'll be back with Jules after the break.
There's a book that makes it so easy to embrace a healthy, gluten-free lifestyle, even kids will like it. Filled with heartwarming stories, food as medicine health tips, easy allergy-free recipes, and creative culinary inventions, the award-winning book Yum by Dr. Theresa Nicassio is your source for all of this and more. So make gluten-free living easy, tasty, and fun. Get Yum, plant-based recipes for a gluten-free diet at Amazon.com or visit yumfoodforliving.com. That's yumfoodforliving.com.
What does HealthyLife.net and Amazon.com have in common? Well, they're both available on the Internet. They both give great value. But most important, most of our positive program hosts and guests are accomplished authors, and their books are available from, you got it, Amazon.com. Now, it even gets better than that, because when you're listening on air to a HealthyLife.net host or guest, you can go directly to Amazon.com and you can order your book while you're still listening to your favorite HealthyLife.net program. So when you hear an author you like, go to the homepage of HealthyLife.net and click on Amazon.com.
When you have a food allergy or dietary limitation, Dr. Theresa Nicassio knows it's hard to give up the foods you love, so she decided to put on her chef hat and give you affordable, personalized culinary consultations that will light up your taste buds. You'll explore substitute ingredients so you can enjoy your favorite foods again. She'll even help you make food preparation easy and guide you on your path to healthy living. And to get started, all you have to do is call 604-445-6463. That's 604-445-6463.
HealthyLife.net, the positive radio network.
YumFoodForLiving.com is the place to get easy, allergy-free recipes, all free of sugar, gluten, and dairy. But that's not all you'll get when you visit YumFoodForLiving.com. You'll get resources for all kinds of things like wellness articles, videos, podcasts, a blog, all to help you create easy, healthy living. There's even a 50-page downloadable book introducing you to the philosophy of Yum. Don't wait. Visit YumFoodForLiving.com. YumFoodForLiving.com. That's YumFoodForLiving.com.
HealthyLife.net, the positive radio network.
Welcome back to the Dr. Theresa Nicassio Show, where we celebrate everyday heroes and work together to help make the world a better place. And today we've been talking with lawyer turned gluten-free blogger, I love saying that, author and entrepreneur Jules Shepard, who is sharing her story about how celiac disease has changed her life. And just before the break, Jules was talking about a lot of the research, associations of the different areas of the body that are impacted by gluten, and whether you have celiac disease or gluten intolerance, or you're just a human being and your body is not having fun dealing with the gluten, the gliadin protein, or the glyphosates or other things, other kinds of pesticides and things that they're finding are interacting with the gluten molecules, that making people more sick, which you'll hear more about on the 23rd of January when Dr. Jill Carnahan's on. So it's really important stuff here, guys. And so, I think you were a lawyer for some special reason, Jules, and helped fire you up. And Jules had this brilliant idea. I'd love you to tell the story about what led to you building co-creating a 11-foot tall, 1-ton cake to get the attention of the FDA.
Well, it's a great story. I love telling it because it's not just about me. It's about really how the community really came together for an amazing cause and was able to be successful, in our mission, which was to get gluten-free food labeling regulations in the United States. Canada was way ahead of us, but that's neither here nor there. But basically, I had a friend named John Forberger. He's still my friend, but at the time, we were communicating through Twitter and had just gotten to know each other that way. He is a triathlete who found out that he needed to be gluten-free and had pancreatic issues, that very severe pancreatic issues that reacted when he would eat gluten. And one day I found out he was in the hospital, and I talked to him on the telephone and said, my goodness, is everything okay? And he said, well, I ate a few pretzels that were labeled gluten-free, and they apparently weren't, because it landed me in the hospital. And, I mean, really, really bad stuff. He was in there for a long time, and it's very severe when he has a reaction to gluten, and it's always to gluten. That's what happened. So we knew he had been contaminated by these pretzels that were labeling themselves gluten-free. So we, I was trying to cheer him up, and we were just trying to talk about, how horrible this was, and, I don't know. I think at some point, I launched into this thing, and I said, we should make a giant pretzel or something, and try and raise attention for the fact that, people are labeling foods as gluten-free and they're not. And, but the giant pretzel or a giant cookie or something is all limited by the size of the oven. So
right, I was thinking
if we build a cake, like we could just stack one upon the other and get people's attention, right? And we were just, talking about it. Well, then I started looking into it further and realized that under the Food Allergy Labeling Consumer Protection Act, FALCPA, as it's called, the FDA was supposed to have issued gluten-free food regulations a long time before this time when John was sick, and that they had never done it. And it shocked me, because I thought, well, if there's a regulation out there, just like a law, you're supposed to abide by it. And the FDA had never issued gluten-free food regulations.
Wow.
So we looked into it a lot further, and we're kind of outraged by the fact that, my friend had gotten sick because there were no food regulations that had required this company to abide by some strict standard in order to label their product gluten-free.
Wow.
And not just him, but so many of us. I mean, anyone who has celiac disease or has gluten sensitivity or other issues where you react to food, most people have had a problem where, they thought something was gluten-free or free of that food, particular food allergen, and they've, have had something terrible happen to them where they've gotten exposed. And it's not something to mess around with. It's either a life or death situation with food allergies, and thankfully the top 8 food allergies were covered by the Food Allergy Labeling Consumer Protection Act. But for people like me and for John, gluten was not covered, and so it was something else altogether. So what we decided to do was to try to draw attention to this and to try to lobby and pressure the FDA to actually do what they were supposed to have done in 2008. And the only way we could do that where it would actually matter, where it would count, people could hear about it outside of our community, was to stage some sort of a big, hairy deal, so to speak.
Get it in the media.
Yeah, and so we decided we would pursue this cake idea. And so I have a dear friend, Lee Tobin, who at the time was the head of the Whole Foods Gluten-Free Bakehouse. And I had another dear friend, Aaron Flores, who was the head chef at the Washington, D.C. Embassy Suites, which had a really great location right on the street, a 2-story pane glass window where you could see from the street. And so we decided we would build the cake there, and it would be, 2 stories where you could see it through the window on the street. And we would raise money to build the cake, but also to lobby the FDA. And then it doesn't sound as I guess as awesome now as it did at the time, because there are all these sites now, GoFundMe and all that kind of stuff. They didn't have that back then. And so just on our own, through Twitter and Facebook, basically, we got 10,000 petition signatures in about 2 months, and we sent them all, actual, pages of signatures to the FDA, and we pressured them through the news media about this big cake. And so we were on the front cover of the Washington Post. We were in USA Today a couple times, I think, and then Forbes, on, ABC, so because of the cake, because
so great.
people were like, this is cool, but would see that this is for a cause, and it was for a cause we cared about, but they cared about the cake. So it worked because we brought the community together, all of the major groups, all of the research institutions, the heads of major gluten-free companies, everybody came together, and we had this summit, and the FDA came, and they listened, and they put out the gluten-free food regulations afterwards. so
folks, we have Jules and her friend, what was his name, John, to thank for so much of the improvements of what's available for us now. I know that on March 20th, actually, Carolyn Molasses is going to be coming on talking about food labeling, just food labeling. It's a huge issue, and as you discovered, just because something is supposedly supposed to be done doesn't mean it is done. And people's lives are affected. So thank you so much for being an everyday hero. You and John just pull it together and pulling a community of all the everyday heroes together to make a difference, Jules. I can't tell you what that means to all of us. But I know we need to be taking a break again. And after the break, we're going to be having the Because You Asked segment. And I'm super excited because Jules has agreed to join us for the Because You Asked segment. And we do have a couple of questions that she'll be answering during that segment. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Being inspired by a speaker while learning everyday positive information that you can use to help your life is exactly what Dr. Theresa Nicassio does when she speaks in front of your group. From healthcare professionals to special needs parenting and everything in between, Dr. Theresa Nicassio can customize topics for your group on everything from health to psychology. To book Dr. Theresa Nicassio as a speaker for your group, visit yumfoodforliving.com or call 604-445-6463. That's 604-445-6463.
If you're like the 8 out of 10 women that say finding jeans that fit is a problem, well, your problem is solved. Lee Jeans has done extensive research, and they have jeans that fit. There's even an online Lee Fit Finder so you can find the right fit for you. Imagine jeans that instantly slim you with a custom fit and no gap waistband. And guys, kids, Lee has jeans for you too. Click through to Lee's Jeans on the HealthyLife.net advertiser page and get what fits.
When you have a food allergy or dietary limitation, Dr. Theresa Nicassio knows it's hard to give up the foods you love, so she decided to put on her chef hat and give you affordable, personalized culinary consultations that will light up your taste buds. You'll explore substitute ingredients so you can enjoy your favorite foods again. She'll even help you make food preparation easy and guide you on your path to healthy living. And to get started, all you have to do is call 604-445-6463. That's 604-445-6463. There's a book that makes it so easy to embrace a healthy, gluten-free lifestyle, even kids will like it. Filled with heartwarming stories, food as medicine health tips, easy allergy-free recipes, and creative culinary inventions, the award-winning book Yum by Dr. Theresa Nicassio is your source for all of this and more. So make gluten-free living easy, tasty, and fun. Get Yum, plant-based recipes for a gluten-free diet at Amazon.com. Or visit yumfoodforliving.com. That's yumfoodforliving.com.
Radio your way. HealthyLife.net.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Dr. Theresa Nicassio Show, where we celebrate life, love, and kindness while also acknowledging the challenges that are a part of living. And so now is the part of the show where, for your questions to be answered, whether they're about psychology, health, parenting, cooking, pets, celiac disease, allergies, relationships, gardening, whatever you'd like to ask about. To send in your questions, just click on the Ask Theresa tab on my website, TheresaNicassio.com. That's Theresa with an H, N-C-H-E-R-E-S-A, and like Nancy, I-C-A-S-S-I-O.com. Or you can email your questions directly to me at Theresa@TheresaNicassio.com. And I want to apologize, guys, for the technical difficulties we were having with the Ask Theresa tab on the website. I think it's all fixed and good to go. Mentioning the website before I forget, I wanted to mention that there's also a special profile page of about Jules. And so if you've missed any of the materials, her website, then all those links are directly on my website, so you can get there. Jules is also going to be providing for me to add to the website some of the links to those articles and materials that she has, and so that's kind of exciting. And the other thing, Jules, maybe we'll just start because one of the links she's going to provide is information about what went into making that cake. So why don't we start, before we get into the other questions, just real quick, Jules, how many pounds of sugar, butter, all that was involved for that cake?
Yeah, well, the cake was enormous in that it was baked in the Whole Foods Gluten-Free Bakehouse rotating oven. So each individual cake was like way bigger than you could have even fit into a regular oven. Wow. And we had it went 11 feet tall, and in between every so often, my husband, architect, a cake architect in his side life, I guess, is the one who built it basically and structured it. And we had plywood in between a certain number of layers, and we had PVC piping and threaded rebar rods through the middle of it. Because although it would have been quite a spectacle if the cake had fallen over on people, we didn't really want that to happen.
Right. Well, what a construction act. So anyway, so for the details about that, we're going to be having the link about that.
Were insane. There were 270 pounds of eggs in this cake. I know. There were 91 pounds of soy milk because we made it dairy free. 45 pounds of Earth Balance Buttery 6. 459 pounds of sugar. 547 pounds of my GF Jules gluten-free flour. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. And then the frosting was 700 pounds worth of frosting.
Oh, my gosh.
And we had to erect
I don't even want to talk about the sugar part. That's for another talk.
We had to
erect it
made a point. Only in a few hours and slather on all that frosting.
Oh, my gosh. Crazy. And it just sounds like it was a real party.
It was neat. It was neat.
That's great.
Never to be repeated.
Yeah, super. Yeah, never, but sure, forever to be remembered.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
Jules, I have got a couple questions for you. Hopefully we can get through both of them in our little time we have. I'm just going to fly through them and get to the chase here. So here we go. I'm a 37-year-old mother of 2 and was recently diagnosed with celiac disease. My 7 and 10-year-old kids are upset that they can't eat the same food as before. Talk about emotional stuff, right? The grieving. They used to eat a lot of sandwiches in their lunches, but now won't eat them because they don't like the gluten-free bread that we've been buying. The truth is, it doesn't taste that good and falls apart. What do you suggest we do? Missing bread in Montana. Any recommendations?
Well, yeah, I mean, my general recommendation is, it sounds like the kids don't have celiac, but she does, and that's a little bit of a flip for a lot of families, because a lot of families are dealing with the kids have a dietary issue and the parents don't, and then what do they do? But you have to sort of figure out what works for your family. If the kids don't have to eat gluten-free, there are ways to keep a loaf of gluten bread in your house and just, make a sandwich and make sure that it's, stays away from everything else. I actually have an article on my website called The Top 7 Things to Do When You Go Gluten-Free, and it talks about keeping contamination down when you have things like that, and you want to maintain one small bit of gluten in your house or what have you. The other thing is wraps are a really good idea for something that, won't fall apart as much. And there are gluten-free wraps, or she could obviously buy gluten wraps if they can handle that. And then in terms of bread, I just always recommend making your own, because I make bread all the time, and everyone loves it. I mean, and I'm the only one in my house who can't have gluten, and everyone eats my bread. So it kind of depends on what works best for your family, if she wants to get a bread machine or if she likes to bake bread. and then they can have fresh-baked, yummy bread that they won't complain about. Or if she just wants to have a loaf of gluten bread and make sure that she, follows all of the rules to keep any cross-contamination down to a minimum.
Yeah, I just want to mention about your bread. So this is really, I think this is important. Jules has been doing a ton around using the bread machine and creating super easy recipes with the bread machine. I think I have one of those YouTubes on your profile page, Jules.
That one was from, I think it was from 2006 or 2007.
Okay,
that was
send me the link to the best
one.
Send me an updated link of what one you think is the best bread people can make with the bread machines.
Happy to do that.
That would be awesome. And real quick, if we can, the second question, I'm just going to get the basic part of the question. How long did it, so I know that you were really sick from gluten, Jules. How long did it take for you to feel better after you stopped eating gluten? I'm going to leave the rest of the question out just so we can get to it.
That's a fantastic question, and really the parenthetical after that is, and how long will it take me? And that's what everyone really wants to know. Everybody's different. I think depending on how long you manifested, like, overt symptoms of celiac disease, that can affect how long it really takes you to get better. 60% of people who have celiac disease don't even have any overt symptoms. It doesn't mean that it's not affecting them and not making them more susceptible to other things. But I feel like those people tend to feel better faster because they never really felt that bad to begin with.
Right.
People who have extreme symptoms or have developed other problems, those can take longer to resolve. For example, for me, I have developed all kinds of different colitis issues, and that was because I wasn't diagnosed for so long, and it allowed my body to develop other problems. The colitis is not going to go away just because my celiac is under control. And so if you have developed other problems like that, it can take longer. But in general, I think a lot of people start to feel somewhat better, at least within a week, 2 weeks. They might notice something different. And then, as the months progress, a big difference in their health, more energy, maybe the brain fog is gone, maybe the bathroom issues aren't as bad. But it's a process, and your body has to heal. If you understand what's really going on with celiac, your body has to regenerate that villi, and that can take time. So give yourself some time to heal, and don't be too hard on yourself if it doesn't, happen immediately. But you should definitely start to feel better, as time goes on.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, and I'll say that, with the anemia, I thought my anemia would go away within a year or two after going off of gluten, and it didn't. I'm really happy to say that just this last year, I did have to have iron treatments and such, but it seems like that's improved, so that's exciting. Before we finish, though, I just thank you. You're just awesome. And again, all of Jules' information is on the TheresaNicassio.com website, which you can get at TheresaNicassio.com, Theresa with an H, and like Nancy and 2 S's, like Sam. But if you had, one piece of advice, so, kind of one takeaway that you would like to offer our listeners today, Jules, what would that be?
Well, I guess, not everyone has celiac, obviously, but I think that people need to understand how critical food is in our lives in making us feel bad and in making us feel good. Mm-hmm. And whether you have celiac or whether you have gluten sensitivity or you have a food allergy, it doesn't matter. Re-examine your diet. Like, look at those processed foods. Start reading food labels and maybe make some more food at home. Maybe that would be a good 2000 to do, because then you can control the ingredients. And I think everybody will feel better if they, really treat food as fuel and, enjoy the treats, but also understand that you need to get a balanced diet and you need to control and, not enjoy all of those processed foods with preservatives and things like that, because everyone can do better without it.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Jules.
You're so very welcome.
Food can be medicine. It also can be toxic. Yes. So for those of you who want to learn a lot more about this, Dr. Alessia Fasano, probably the biggest researcher, most important researcher in the gut research around gluten sensitivity and and celiac disease. He's going to be on the show February 27th, so be sure to mark your calendar, and you might want to call in and ask him questions directly. But we do need to be finishing today. I hope you've enjoyed this show. Be sure to tune in next week when Kate Maliha is going to be here talking about exercise for healthy aging, mood, and brain health. And so as we close today and head off for the next week, remember that sometimes our toughest challenges turn out to be our greatest gifts. So, Jules, your challenges around, and my own as well, around gluten has turned out to be a gift that we can offer to other people. So thanks for joining us today, and until next time, have a great week. Take care.